Now their time here looking fantastic, looking ready to go into our second match of the day. Cameron, you're looking especially ready to go.
Yeah, I'm hyped. I finally picked the team that did
proud
well.
of you, man.
Low kills despite getting second place, but I finally got some points and I broke 100. That's all that matters. The climb has started.
That's my question.
Yes.
I actually legitimately
you had to bring the mood down. You
I'm
had to
sorry.
bring the mood down, but
I had no idea. I thought you would have bumped it up on that. Well, you know what?
Just threw him right under there. There were
I didn't
four
know.
wheels. They were spinning, and just okay.
It's fine. It's because he can do it yet again here. It's a good start for him, and I think he can keep it going. In Virum, you typically have a decent start in your predictions, and then as the day goes on, you get a lot of 1s and 2s. Speaking of throwing people under the bus there, but let's talk about Vikendi a little bit here. How do you feel like this map's going to go? In Virum, off the bat, we saw Cloud9 have a decent start. Wildcard as well. Do you think they're going to do it yet again?
I think those are two teams that could definitely look to perform, but I'm actually kind of going with the group a little more so on this one. I think that Loops this is like one of their maps. These smaller maps that have a lot of compounds, a lot of breaching. We saw them play like a weird passive thing yesterday on Vikendi where they like hold up in a mansion and they just got circle luck after circle luck, and then they ended up placing pretty high, but they didn't get a ton of kills because they tried to overextend them. Now I'm hoping they go back to more of their traditional style. They try and play the edge of the circle a little more like we saw in that last. I thought they were dead like 3 times. I kept seeing them pop up in the kill feed. I'm like, surely Loops is out by now. But they weren't. And that's the kind of tenacity that I'm rooting for here in this game.
What about you, Cameron?
I'm gonna pick Loops as well. They're really, really good on this map, and when they're the ones that they're the aggressors, no matter on what map they're on, they're particularly good at it. And Vikendi gives a lot of opportunities to beat the aggressors into an isolated 1v1 fight.
Well, you know what, Cameron? If you're right on this pick, I'm gonna start picking exactly what you choose every single time from now on, because I feel like you got the momentum, you got it going on your side, you got the magic, and you're gonna bring us the magic now as we get into our second match of the day on Vikendi. Take it away, guys.
Thank you so much, Jason. We're coming for your spot. Don't get too comfy. Don't get too comfy up there at the top of the leaderboards. We're coming for you. As we're about to get on to Vikendi. We've casted a lot of Vikendi over the last week, Cameron, and honestly, this is one of the maps that I'm a big fan of casting, just because there's so much action. It definitely slowed down yesterday for our first day of the Super Weekend. Teams weren't playing quite as eccentric as they were during league play, but I think today, now that they've got it under their belts one more time, we might see more of that again.
Yesterday was also a little weird because there was a couple of fights that happened throughout the early and the early mid game. But once people saw that it was going to be the mansion that Loops had hold of towards the end game, it was actually very, very difficult. Because whenever there's a position like that where dead center is a compound that's a wide open field around it, it makes it a little tricky, and you need to be a lot more precise with your timings on when you push forward. Now, the second multiple teams all made it up to the walls, that's when Loops got a little bit of trouble and things started to ramp up once again. But this time around, if the circle, as long as it stays away from having one primary large compound dead center, then I think there's going to be more consistent action throughout the entire map.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking forward to as well. Because, as much as, we get the time to talk about more of the esoteric nature of the game and the high-level strategy and the thought process and the mind games over, the first 10 or 12 minutes of the game or so before the action really starts to get hyped up. At the same time, we like to cast action from the beginning. And what's actually right dead center there in the middle of this circle, Cameron? Is it a big compound like you talked about?
I mean, there's a lot of compounds in this circle. I mean, it's phase 1. It could still go anywhere. There's a lot of directions that this could go. I'm more worried about the frozen river and castle.
Yeah.
And the fact that there are a lot of big open spaces, especially when you look towards sort of the southwest. But really, it's just going to be a lot of individual compounds that teams are going to focus up on, try and clear areas, and plan for rotations for phase 2 and 3.
And this is interesting because we're both... So normally, you see KP, you see Konita Power, and Wildcard go down to Villanova. We're not seeing either of those teams do that here this time. Instead, we're seeing Konita Power now contesting up against Team Unique. And this is interesting because Unique didn't have the best day number 1, but they looked darn solid in that last game. If they're going to be able to carry this one over, and given how Konita Power looked in that last game, this could be disastrous for the squad.
Yeah, the reason why those teams don't go to Villanova now is because of the plane path. But I don't know if they intended to contest another large city on purpose, because as we saw, it hasn't been disasters for them in Villanova, but it hasn't been the best, and they need all the help that they can get. So I think I would have preferred them to perhaps scavenge loot But then again, this map, it's not as small as Sanhok, but it's not as big as Miramar. And so unless you're super familiar with having a plan B, with having a backup, and I don't know if Konina Power have that, it does make sense why they would just say, you know, let's just go to a city we know we can find loot there. Even if we have to fight, it's at least better than finding nothing but queso. Gonna go for a little bit of shots. Yaila, he doesn't find anything either, but it is a little pressure onto Nova, who, we've talked about it, they need a lot of help.
You need a lot of love today. If you're a Nova fan, give them some love in the chat. These boys need it. They didn't have the best start, all things considered. Last game didn't look so hot for them either. They're sort of channeling their inner Pittsburgh Knights and getting caught out on rotations. I think they're going to need to clean that up a little bit here. Teams are going for these full sends, and I'm not loving it quite so much when the teams at this point are so good at team. Like, if there's one guy who looks your way and they take some shots and you get through, like, that's okay. But at this point, the level of communication these teams have, they're able to just distill so much information down and get so many shots out from so many different players at the same time that your vehicle could go from alive to dead. You could go from alive to... Oh... Nobody saw that. Okay. You're fine. You're good. You're good.
Good. But where are they going, though? They're just driving further and further south. And you see they're going through now Yala territory. If they make it through and they're able to make it to Winery, it looks like they're trying to go to, then they could find some loot. But they're going to be very, very slow on their rotation. They might be playing it too safe.
And there's this idea. I think maybe right now they've been doing what I just described. They've been playing too aggressive. They've been trying to go into the center of the circle and own it, but they've been getting caught out. Maybe this time they're just going to go to Winery, and then they're just going to edge creep their way in. Honestly, that might just be the play here. They're just going to play the edge of the circle all the way in. They're going to not get shot on crazy rotations. We'll see if a bit of a change of game plan here, because they need a change of game plan, frankly, Cameron.
Yeah, it's just and Nova not wanting to take a loot in the circle despite having to drive through half of it does sort of show why Konina Power also went towards that city to loot up. Because you never exactly know where a team is looting unless you studied it extensively. And if you're a team that loots for Nova, you don't necessarily need to study the exact details of all the teams on the north side, especially with a plane path like this. You just don't know where one team's map control begins and another one ends and what's free.
And we're all going to pretend we didn't see that, Rom. Don't worry about it. Nobody saw that. Don't worry about it at all. Ooh, as we're seeing Dream Eaters start to go into it with Team Queso. Team Queso, who had a great position in that last game, lost a straight up 4v4 to Tempo Storm. Now down to 3 players to start this game, and this is the kind of fights that I love to see. It's just like you've got some trees, you've got some rocks. How to utilize your cover? But Dream Eaters have a great angle on this because they've got 2 players on the flank.
But, oh, wait.
Oh, hang on.
Killers, they're hearing this as well.
Uh-oh.
This could... Oh, Varsit, he needs... I hope he starts to hear the footsteps soon. It all depends on timing on who strikes when and where. Udo Killers, they are in the forest that we saw very prominent yesterday, and Varsit is aware of their existence.
Oh my goodness, this could be the third party right now, because I was complimenting Dream Eater's positioning because they had the 2-2, but... If you see all of Voodoo Killers collapse, that's now a 4v2, and suddenly Dream Eaters is taking a fight on both positions. This is actually something we talked about yesterday on our Vikendi game. I think it was Cloud9, and there was another team, it might have been Tempo Storm, that was doing this, and you're like, oh, Paul, but it could be risky for them, and this is the risk we're talking about. If Voodoo Killers can capitalize, but Lutz is there with the shots, why am I even surprised? Another team is getting involved in this fight.
Yeah, this is dead center of the circle, which is why there are so many teams here. And you could
exit stage left.
Look how hard it is to actually get full map control on this map. So many rocks, so many compounds, and even the forest areas are really dense compared to forests on Erangel. KSO need to find some place and just hole up, like in a tiny little hole. Stop extending at this point. Alpha, though, losing a player in the kill feed. Loop's going aggressive.
Possibly getting a little bit of revenge from last game, because I believe those two ended up fighting a bit. This Wildcard as well is getting into it with B4, and we're seeing that right now. Pedro down. Sam and crew able to pick up those shots. You can see the tracks in the snow from the vehicle. You can see where it all went wrong. Oh, now he's burning. No. Oh, my goodness.
The fire didn't hit, I don't think. Smoke's still coming out from Levy, so Pedro definitely called out, I'm safe. Yeah, the fire didn't exactly hit. Smokes are going to help. Sam has such a good angle, and unless B4 want to use 4, 5, 6 smokes to make a tunnel to get him, it's not really going to be good. But B4, they've already lost 1 player in mix, so they might be forced to. They might find no other option but to use that utility to at least stay 3 up. But if they go for it and they lose a third,
I think you cut your losses.
I don't know what you would choose here.
Yeah, he's done. I think you cut your losses here and just reset. They're actually, I mean, again, we have two teams now that have been taking down only 2 members on both sides of Wildcard. You've got Team Queso on one side, you've got B4 on the other. Oh man, bit of a rough time, and I think again this is what I was talking about, getting caught out on your rotations as much as you want to get to. And speaking of which, there's Pittsburgh Knights. As much as you want to get yourself into that optimal position, you know, people can hear you coming. You've got to be cognizant of that and the fact that, you know, where this playing path was versus where the circle is, teams have had time to get into position.
There's a lot of teams that are already dead center. I think we're seeing more center congestion than we have previously on Vikendi or any other map, because we're almost halfway through Super Weekend and teams are realizing that we got to go aggressive and actually fight for these positions. We can't just lie in. I mean, you can hope the circle comes your direction, but that's not the way to secure a victory. That's not the way to secure a win. You want to go big. You want to find the opportunities in the same way that Foots found an opportunity there to find a kill on a bit of an overextension of Queso, who, as we saw, down to 2 players. And yes, this is what they want at this point. Find a small compound, only 2 players, you can't hold a big one, 2 buildings, maybe 3, and just try and play super defensive.
Yeah, and I think Wildcard's playing with 2 players facing in one direction, 2 in the other. They know exactly where their immediate opponents are. But we did see Footballists get involved a little bit earlier on, up against the lobby leaders in Cloud, now potentially being the next one up, involved in that Team Queso fight earlier on. But Bayo's going to go off on his own here a little bit potentially. Interesting that this, you know, he's the shot caller, one of their shot callers. I'm going to try and spread out here, and you talked about it not 20 seconds ago, Cameron, the idea of taking a compound that you know you can control. Don't overexert yourself. Don't overextend yourself. That's important, especially on Vikendi.
Yeah, they're just the way that the terrain, high, low, it's not as dramatic as Miramar, but it's in a way even sneakier, because at least Miramar, when you're on the high ground, there's often not a lot of cover. And there's not just the terrain that moves up and down with the rocks and the hills that we're seeing Ayala look down one just as we speak, but also the tree cover and the rock cover, and people can sneak up onto you. So you really need to be aware, and you have to be aware of how far your sort of zone of influence extends.
Zone of influence. I like that a lot. Actually. That's it's like some OG gaming terminology here. How much do you control? And speaking of control, Loops seem to actually be playing. They did this last time around. They played outside the circle. And they going in now. Yeah, they're going to be totally fine. They can even take Castle if they wanted to. But this is actually a pretty forgiving circle for a lot of folks. Unique's got to rotate in, Konita Power. But for most squads, this is benefiting those. Like I said, benefiting those early rotations. If you're not already here, you're late. We're going to see a little bit of a shuffle, I think. But a lot of teams literally don't have to move if they don't want to.
There's just to the west of Castle on the mainland, there's a intersection between 2 roads I think is the strongest position in this circle. It's only phase 2, it could shift off of it, but I'd like to see some teams that are close to it already. I'm looking at Umbra, I'm looking at Tempo Storm to try and find it right now, but Konita Power, they once again find themselves not in a great position. They were coming in from the west side, and they had a little bit of a squabble with Unique, and isn't it Falcons onto